Because you could be the most talented individual in the world, but if you're saying I'm not CISO material, you're stuck. And we need to unstick you. So what I always tell folks is, I'm going to give you what you want, which is the CISO, but I'm going to also slip in what you really need. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, 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 welcome. You know what time it is. It's time for the podcast of Life of a CISO with yours truly, Dr. E is in the house. It's always a pleasure to join you, and thank you so much for giving me some of your time, and I hope you continue to find it valuable. As always, any comments, any topics you'd like me to cover, anything that might be important to you that you would like me to shed some light on, just post it below, right, under the video, and we do monitor and track that, and we'll get back to you, and you never know, we'll do a whole series or a whole podcast on your topic area. One of the things I want to start off with is one of the things that I believe strongly in, and it's evident if you look out there at world-class people. World-class people have coaches. I believe everybody needs a coach. If you look at the best athletes, they have coaches. If you look at the best movie stars, anyone who is top in their field has a coach, and the reason is simple. The way you get better is by improving on areas that you can't see. Because let's face it, if you were aware that there was a problem and you were aware that that problem was holding you back from getting to the next level, you would have fixed it. If you knew that, okay, if I fix this problem, I'm fully aware of this problem, and if I fix this problem, I could double my income. Or if I fix this problem, I could make $5 million a year. You're telling me you wouldn't fix it? You're telling me you wouldn't schedule and put a lot of time, energy, and effort in making it better? But what's the problem? We don't see that it's a problem. They're blind spots, or they're embedded patterns, or they're limiting beliefs, or they're programs of the subconscious mind, right? Whatever discipline you want to do, we have a lot of different words from whether we're talking motivation, self-help, sports, or other areas. There's a lot of terms for it, but the bottom line is there's something that you do automatically that you're not aware of that's holding you back. And that's true of everyone, because if that wasn't true, you would be limitless, right? If that wasn't true, you would have already exceeded or reached all your goals, right? Because clearly, if you want to make $100 million and you are not making $100 million, you have a program that's prohibiting you from doing that. Because if that wasn't true, you would have achieved the goal, right? So the idea behind the coach is they're able to see that blind spot. And to me, that's really the value of the CISO certification. I've had a lot of people sort of ask me more and more about the CISO cert. And I'm like, Eric, it's just training, right? It's just got, no. There is a knowledge transfer component, about 40 hours of that, that's actually real world. This is not theory or textbook. This is not anything you're going to get by reading a book. This is sort of real world, what it takes to be a CISO. There's a private peer group, but the huge differentiator is the coaching. You get actual coaching with me, where we jump on a call. It's group coaching. We do have other programs. If you would like to do one-on-one coaching, we also have those options available. Of course, they're a little more expensive than the group coaching, right? But we do have that option available. But the CISO cert includes a group coaching component. Now, what I find is people that aren't used to or have never done group coaching, they're hesitant because they're like, Eric, I don't want to listen to you coaching other people. But you know what I find? Most of the time, your issues, problems, beliefs, blind spots, the thing that's holding you back often gets addressed and fixed when I'm coaching somebody else. And here's why. When I'm coaching you directly, you're so focused that you sometimes don't always hear or don't always listen as well because you're so focused on, okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to tell them? What do I want to ask? Right? As we often do a lot, we're so focused on what we want to say that we sometimes aren't receiving as much as we can. But when I'm coaching somebody else, you're more relaxed, you're listening, you're just observing. And what you're going to find very often is you're going to go, wow, that person has the exact same problem I have. That person has the exact same issue, right, that I have in place. And it's because we're all very similar, right? We all have similar problems, similar challenges in place. So it helps out a lot there. But even when I do time with you, where it's a group coaching, but I do spend one-on-one time, I'm often able to see that blind spot very, very quickly and address it. And I have tons and tons of these success cases. My favorite one is, but they're all very similar to this, is we had somebody, very successful career. They worked at the government. I don't want to give away too much because I don't want to give away the individual, but they had a very prominent job at the government. That they worked on a lot of cybersecurity investigations, had a lot of skills, and for 3 years, they wanted to become a CISO, and they couldn't. They joined the CISO certification. I did one coaching with them, 10 minutes with them, and within 2 months, they tripled their income, and they have a CISO position for a Fortune 500 company. Now, once again, your mileage will vary depending on the experience, but I have case after case after case of these people that are struggling for years after years, and we do a couple or 1 or 2 coaching, and everything changes. And I'll show you the example. I'm coaching this person, and the first words out of their mouth were, I'm not CISO material, and no one's going to hire me as a CISO. But Eric, I really, really want to be a CISO, and I think I have the skill sets, but nobody is going to hire me as a CISO, and I'm not CISO material. And they sort of kept repeating it. I said, okay, great. 30 seconds, the mystery of why you haven't been able to get a CISO job is solved. And they're like, it is? I'm like, yeah, you just told me you're not CISO material, and why would anybody hire you? I said, it's not true, but you believe it's true. You show up to the interviews believing that it's the truth. And what do you think those people walk away with? That you're not CISO material, because that's the message you're going to give them. Either implicitly or explicitly, you don't even realize it. I remember one case where there was somebody who didn't have a bachelor's degree, but they had a lot of experience. And I'm like, it's not a problem. And they're like, Eric, no one's going to hire me because I don't have a degree. So I sat in on one of their interviews, and I kid you not, the interview was going great. They did exactly what we said. They're rocking the interview. They're doing awesome. And I'm like, yes. And then at the very end, the person interviewing them saying, looks like you're perfect for the job. I'll definitely get back to you shortly. And I'm like, great. And then the person says, oh, by the way, you've probably noticed I don't have a bachelor's degree. And I'm like, why did you do that? Right? And then, woo, right? And the whole thing spiraled. They didn't notice. It wasn't a problem, but they made it a problem. And that's the issue. They didn't even realize they were doing that. So because they had that limiting belief, they were, in this case, overtly using that to sabotage them. But it's not an issue unless you make it an issue. So in this case, this person kept saying, I'm not CISO material. So when you show up to the interview, what message do you think you're telling them? So I said, okay, I knew that me just saying you are CISO material isn't going to fix it. because they have 5 years of somebody telling them they're not a CISO, and they believed it. So I said, okay, what are 10 characteristics of a CISO? If we were looking at the ideal CISO, can you give me the characteristics? And they said, okay, it would be somebody that has worked in the industry for over 5 years. It's somebody who has briefed corporate executives. It's somebody who understands and can read financial statements. It's somebody that understands business. It's somebody who can translate between business and tech. And this person's going on labeling list. I said, great. I said, send me your CV. And I actually put the CV on the screen. And I said, okay. And I started highlighting. I said, aren't all of those things excessive industry experience in cybersecurity? And I said, yes. So I said, don't you have the first characteristic? And they said, yes. I then said, okay. I removed that. And then I started highlighting some other stuff. And I said, didn't you brief executives at Fortune 50 companies and brief high-level executives? Didn't you actually testify before Congress? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, so don't you meet or exceed that second requirement? And they said, yes. And then I went back and said, well, didn't you run a business unit at the government where you were responsible for budgets and you had to look at the financial statements and the costs and expenses? And they said, yes. And I'm like, check that. So I went through every one of those items and I said, you exceed all 10 of those requirements that you just said a CISO needs. So tell me exactly, with facts, why you believe you're not CISO material. And I saw the light go on. And they're like, I actually am. I am CISO material. I'm like, yes. Right? And once that happened, and they truly believed with the facts that they were CISO material, they then showed up to the interviews differently. They then talked differently. They acted differently. Because if you're going in believing that you're not qualified, whether you realize it or not, you are going to behave differently than if you don't. And they've even done this with sports folks. When somebody gets in a slump, the biggest issue is in their mind. Because if they go up to bat and they believe they're going to strike out, they're going to swing early, they're going to swing, they're going to almost, without realizing it, self-sabotage, because the captain, your conscious mind, is telling the crew, your subconscious mind, we're going to strike out. So what do you think the crew says? Your wish is my command. You're saying we're going to strike out, so we need to do things to make sure you strike out. And I know some people at this point go, oh, Eric, come on, this is crazy stuff. I've done this a lot. Trust me, it works, right? If you don't believe you're CISO material, you are not going to get a job as a CISO. So if we could fix that one issue, in that case, she had all the skills, she had the personality, she had the background, she had the CV. I didn't need to give her any of that. All I needed to do was flip the switch. All I needed to do was uninstall or remove that limiting belief. And once we did that, everything changed. And I will tell you, what I hear from people that go through the 6-month program is, Eric, the CISO stuff is great. The CISO material is awesome. The technical stuff, that how to brief the executive board, giving me tips and tricks of how to meet with the CEO on a weekly basis, that was all invaluable. But what changed my life was what I wasn't expecting, what I didn't think you were going to give us, but what I really, really needed, which was some of the beliefs, mindset adjustment. Because you could be the most talented individual in the world, but if you're saying I'm not CISO material, you're stuck. And we need to unstick you. So what I always tell folks is, I'm going to give you what you want, which is the CISO, but I'm going to also slip in what you really need. And that's why in these Life of a CISO podcasts, I usually spend 10 to 15 minutes in the beginning on some of the mindset components, because that's what you need. I know you want the CISO stuff, but you really need this. And that's why I do it in this order. Because if I gave you what you wanted first, when we got to what you needed, you'd stop listening. But by giving you what you need first, right, and getting you set, then when we get into what you want, right, you're ready and excited. So yeah, I am doing a little Jedi mind tricks on you, but I'm telling you that I'm doing Jedi mind tricks, so it's okay, right? So let's get back to, what is a CISO? What is a Chief Information Security Officer? Now, the interesting thing today is most companies know they want a CISO, or they believe it's required because of the type of business they're in, because there are some regulations that say if you're a company in this space, you must have a CISO. So some companies will just give somebody a CISO title, but here's the problem. They don't know what that person is supposed to do. And one of the things I'm finding is people are applying for a CISO job, and they're like, Eric, this isn't a CISO job, right? They want me to update and manage the firewall rule sets. They want me to monitor the SIM. They want me to run incident response. They want me to do hardening and locking down of the systems. But they're going to give me the CISO title, right? Yeah, but you're not a CISO, right? So the title, I guess, if you're really desperate to say you were a CISO, you could. But the problem with that type of job is you could say you have the CISO title, but when you give the work experience, it won't back it up. So it can actually get you in a lot more trouble than you realize. Or I even know some people go on interviews and they're like, Eric, I don't even know what they want. They keep saying CISO, CISO, but there's no clear direction or focus. So here's my recommendation. If you're looking for a CISO position, or you're currently a CISO that is either struggling or a little frustrated, write a detailed job description. Write a detailed job description for what you believe you should be doing. And this I actually started with a few of my private coaching clients that are existing CISOs that are just butting heads with execs. They're like, Eric, they won't let me do my job. I want to meet with them and they won't meet with me. I want to put together strategic plans. I want to go in and look at the financials and implement the budget, and they keep saying no, 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 just keep our system secure, right? Patch, lock, but basically do the technical stuff. And they're like, they're not letting me be a CISO. And I go in and said, well, show me your job description. And they're like, well, I don't really have one. Well, write a job description. Write up a job description and send it to the executive team saying, listen, I know I have the title of CISO, but I believe there might be a disconnect between what you think a CISO is and what I think a CISO is. So here's the job description that I believe I'm supposed to do. Do you agree or disagree? And then the pushback I always get from my clients is, but Eric, what if they come back and say no? What if they come back and say, I disagree? I'm like, well, wouldn't you rather know that now than later? Wouldn't you rather know they're not going to let you be the CISO? They gave you the title, but they're not going to let you do the job. Isn't that a good data point to have? Absolutely. Here's what happens more times than not. More times than not, when you do this exercise, one of the executives, very often the CEO, will go, thank you so much for sending that. I never thought about it through the lens that you presented. And I'd like to talk to you about going or transforming into this role. Because if you write it correctly, it's going to be aligned with what they need. And most of the time, it's going to be aligned with what they want. They just don't know. So to me, the big things you want to look at when you write a description for a CISO is an executive within the organization that utilizes cybersecurity as a business enabler. Some very, very powerful words there. A CISO is a chief. Chiefs are executives focused on growing the business. So you need to make it very clear that if you have the CISO title, you are expecting to be an executive that is going to focus on growing the business. Very often at larger companies where the CISO is really a CISO, you get a piece of the action. At most big companies, if you have a C, Chief Executive Officer, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information Security Officer, if you have a chief, your salary, a large percent, is based on the success of the company. I know CISOs that are very well established at very big companies that are part of the core executive team, and their base salary might be $400K, but they get anywhere from $1 to $2 million bonus based on how well the company does, because they're ultimately focused on the growth of the company. Now, what I'm finding a lot is both individuals and companies might not like that. You might go, Eric, I want to move from technical to strategy. Right? I want to start thinking strategy, but I don't know if I'm ready to be a business executive focused on the overall revenue growth of the company. And very often, because CISOs are newer positions, it's what we call a lowercase c, not an uppercase C. An uppercase C or an uppercase chief is one of the core four. CEO, CFO, right? One of those COO, one of those core top execs that are anywhere from 3 to 5 people within an organization. Many organizations that are new to the CISO aren't ready to put you in that category, so it's a little c, not a big C. And the other way we get around that, drop the C. Be an information security officer. That's a great title. That's a great stepping stone. For a lot of you that want to become CISOs, it actually might be better if you're right now a security engineer or even a manager of a technical team. It actually might be better for you to move to an information security officer position and then a chief. And the reason is simple. Many companies have no problem giving you an ISO, information security officer, but they don't want to give you the chief because that implies a different level of oversight. So very important to remember, the C means you're a business executive focused on the overall revenue growth of the company. Now, just like any other chief, your superpower, your strategic weapon is cybersecurity. A CFO strategic weapon is the money. So a CFO is a business executive that uses finances and financial statements to raise awareness to increase overall revenue and profitability. Chief legal officer uses the law or regulation, right, to help grow or keep the company out of trouble. A CISO uses cybersecurity as a business enabler to better protect and secure the growth of the company. So very, very similar mindset. It's just cybersecurity is that weapon. Next thing in your job description is a CISO or an ISO is a strategic thought leader. You are focused on strategy, not technical implementation. You're focused on big picture, not on how we're going to do it. That's why you have a team. That's why you have world-class security engineers to focus on that piece. So we have business executive, strategic thought leader. Next important thing is CISOs are problem solvers. And this is a huge one for some people. Whether we realize it or not, what are world-class security engineers really good at? World-class, and some people get mad at me when I say this, but it's true. World-class security engineers are really good at finding problems, right? A world-class security engineer is going to sit there and look at a system and go, there's a vulnerability, there's a vulnerability, there's a vulnerability, there's a vulnerability. They are very, very good at identifying the problem. not as good as solving it, right? Then they're like, nope, that's the business unit. That's the engineers. That's somebody else's issue. Now, some are, but some aren't. But the big switch when you go from a world-class security engineer to a world-class CISO is you go from identifying problems to solving problems. So third piece is need to be a problem solver. And then the fourth piece is a translator. World-class CISOs can translate from technical to business and business to technical on the fly. They adapt. They automatically know who they're talking to. If they're talking to a security engineer, they speak techie. They can then walk out of the room, be walking down the hallway and run into the COO, and just automatically they can start talking business at a business level and strategy. Now, what's the difference? Business is all about money, finances, revenue, profitability, growth. Right? That's what business is concerned with. Technical is concerned with what are the problems, what are the technical issues, how do we go in and address and solve them, what technology is available for implementing or solving it. So I'll just give you a quick example. A CISO needs to be able to work with their security engineers and say, okay, we have systems that are visible from the internet that are missing patches that cannot be patched because of the applications that are running. These systems cannot be rebuilt because they're accounting for 60% of our revenue. They must continue to run, but they're in a vulnerable state. So what we need to do is put better monitoring in place. So if somebody does try to attack these systems, we can detect them in a timely manner. So let's look at all the different detection technologies that are out there, whether we build a SOC, outsource a SOC, we get SIEM, we get monitoring, we get behavioral analytics in place. But let's look at all the technical solutions. Let's figure out what the best solution is, and let's come up with what that total price of implementation is. So that's the technical side with the security engineers that the CISO does. And they realize to effectively implement this solution, total cost of ownership is going to be $400K. They then go back to the executives and they say, there's a 90% chance that our systems can get compromised and our data can be exposed either to ransomware, exfiltration, or extortion. If that happens, it would cost us approximately $5.5 million, and I want $400K to fix it. Notice the difference from the business to the technical. The technical people don't need to know all the money, and the business folks don't need to know what technical solution you're implementing. World-class CISOs automatically do that translation. That's the magic of being a world-class CISO. So if you want to be a world-class CISO, there's a couple ways to look at this. One is you should have your own job description. And if you're an existing CISO, you should write that up, right, and give that to the executives. Other way to use this, when you're looking for a job and you do an interview, you should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you to see, is this really a CISO position? Or is this a security engineer position disguised as a CISO? Right? Are they just giving you the title, but you're not really going to get the experience? And one thing you might even want to offer, if you think they're a little off, is say, hey, would you like me to send you a job description of what I believe you need in your CISO position for your company? Not only does that show initiative, not only does that show that, hey, you might be a right player, but notice what you're doing. You're now creating and defining the position that you want within the company. You're basically creating your own destiny. Last way you use your list is evaluate yourself. How well do you know business? How well do you know strategy? How well do you know translation? right? How well are you at those different skill sets? And then use that to rate yourself and say, where do I need to improve? Where do I need to focus my energy and effort? Because a lot of CISOs that I look at, or people that want to become CISOs, I look at where they're spending their time right now, and it's all on technical. And I'm like, you're super strong on technical. Business is your weaker item, yet you're not spending more time on business. Or presenting to executives is a weakness, but you're not doing enough presenting. So the other way to use this is not only do you create your own destiny, whether you're an existing CISO or want to be a CISO by creating your own job description, but you also can use it as an improvement plan of where do I need to improve and where do I need to go to the next level. But remember, having the letters CISO doesn't mean a whole lot if you're not actually doing the job of a CISO. Create your own job description and own your own destiny. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO, and I look forward to seeing you next week.